Welcome to the Binge List. Netflix did it again, guys. They made another stellar movie with a stellar cast, and I don't know how to keep doing it, but keep them coming, Netflix. Today I am reviewing The Highwaymen with Woody Harrelson. Well, actually Kevin Costner and Woody Harrelson, I should say, because Kevin Costner is the main character in this movie. He's playing Frank Hamer, who I had no idea who that was. Turns out he was a famous Texas Ranger, something my wife would obviously know since she's from Texas. But he was the guy who tracked down Bonnie and Clyde and executed them. So just give you a brief summary of what this movie's about. The Highwayman thing threw me off, but apparently the Rangers were disbanded in 1933 by the first female governor of Texas, Miriam Ma Ferguson, played by Kathy Bates in the movie. And I just want to stop here and say everybody in this movie was almost perfectly cast. If you read the histories of some of these characters, they couldn't find better actors to give those roles some gravitas, especially Kevin Costner. Because if you read Frank Hamer's history as a Texas Ranger, this guy was an absolute badass. But he did resign because Ma Ferguson got elected to a second term as governor, because the movie doesn't cover this. Ma Ferguson's first term as governor was very corrupt. Her husband, James Ferguson, had been governor before her and had been convicted of corruption. And because of that, he was forced to never again hold public office. So to get around that, his wife ran for governor, and she became the first governor of the state of Texas, first female governor of the state of Texas. And then later she served a second term that wasn't as corrupt as the first, but Frank Hamer resigned in protest because the Rangers had supported her rival in the election. So that's a little back history to these characters. Of course, in the beginning of the movie, Bonnie and Clyde, they help a bunch of prisoners break out of a prison farm, East Helm Prison Farm in Houston County. And because of this, the whole law enforcement bureaucracy in Texas was embarrassed. And of course, they bring, like a lot of these movies, involving a aging lawman, they bring Frank Hamer out of retirement and ask him if he can assist. And of course, he has some headbutting with the FBI. One thing I loved about this movie, there's a big contrast between just the way old law enforcement worked, as far as they didn't use as much science. They used a lot more common sense in tracking people down. They, instead of looking for fingerprints and evidence and stuff like that, they would use, tipsters and informants, and they would study their prey or the convicts they were trying to arrest, and get into how they moved. Because you see in this movie how Kevin Costner, he's visiting crime scenes of officers killed by Bonnie and Clyde, and the FBI is there. They're looking at shell casings. They're looking at fingerprints. They're looking at all this. He's looking at cigarette butts. What brand of cigarettes did Bonnie Parker and Clyde Barrow use? And they would find an off-brand cigarette at that crime scene and determine that, hey, Clyde Barrow didn't necessarily do all the shooting. One of the inmates that they broke out of prison used the brand of cigarettes that they found laying on the ground. So he was able to figure out, hey, they've been using this guy's accomplice, and his family lives in Louisiana. And not to spoil too much about the movies, but they're able to track down Bonnie and Clyde's movement, because they learned that after a run of bank robberies, they would always return home. Sometimes they wouldn't return home necessarily to their parents' house, but maybe the house or houses of some of their accomplices. So there's a lot of good detective work in this movie that I liked. Like I said, it was perfectly cast. Kevin Costner brings that gravitas. Woody Harrelson is perfect as Manny Galt, who is also ex-Texas Ranger. And ostensibly, that's why this movie's called The Highwaymen, because at the time, not in the movie per se, but in real life, Monty Galt was working with the Texas Highway Patrol. So that's kind of how they get the name for this movie, because they were not Rangers when they were contacted to search down Bonnie and Clyde. They were actually working in other capacities. So Highwaymen is kind of a testament to who they actually were when they were contacted. Just to give you a little bit of background. Kim Dickens plays Frank Hamer's wife, and Gladys Hamer, and I hadn't seen her in anything since Fear the Walking Dead, so it's good to see her face. Beautifully cast. I expected that someone like Frank Hamer would be married to a woman with the resolve and steeliness of someone like Kim Dickens. So I just thought she was perfectly cast. I just love her as an actress. I've loved her ever since she was on Lost, but I hope to see her in more things. So at this point, you probably already guessed I'm recommending this for your binge list. It's worth the 2 hours and I think 19 minutes. It's a long movie, but it's worth taking a look at. One of the other things I liked about the movie is that anytime you see any stories about Bonnie and Clyde, the movies are almost always about them and how they were this rock star couple and rock star gangster thugs or whatever you want to call it. This movie made a point of actually focusing on the real heroes of the Bonnie and Clyde saga, and that was the people who hunted them down. And this is a light spoiler, but a spoiler nonetheless. You don't actually see the faces of Bonnie and Clyde. You don't see anything involving them. I mean, you do see them, but it's always from the back. You don't actually see their faces till that final gun battle. And another thing I'd like to point out about the movie, they actually shot that final gun battle where Bonnie and Clyde are gunned down. I think it was about 130 bullets. I think it was. But they actually filmed that scene at the actual place, the actual road in Louisiana where it actually happened. So just a little side note that you'll be happy to know. But everything about this movie was well done. The cinematography, the set design. You really feel like you're in Depression era America when you watch this film. It just, everything looks seedy and run down and just sad. It makes you really wonder how people even lived through that time in our history. But it was a great film, and like I said, I give it a recommend. Go ahead and put this on your binge list. That's all I got for today. I would like to thank again my subscribers, and give me a like and comment if you agree with this my review. If you don't agree with my review, give me a comment. I like to hear from my subscribers, and I encourage you, if you're watching this, you haven't subscribed, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. But that's all I got for today, and I will see you when I see you. Thanks for watching.